Become a Walmart Plus member and be the first in line to shop the hottest online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else. So yeah, Walmart Plus helps you get the gift. The first one your kid wrote on their list like 5 months ago. The gift that if you could just get your hands on it will make this holiday the best holiday ever. Yeah, that gift. Become a Walmart Plus member at walmartplus.com and be the first to shop online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else with early access. Not available to trial members while supplies last.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hychak. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, and somewhere is Doug Hychak. Doug, you there yet? He did threaten he had to go pee or something like that before the show, so I'm not sure. Doug, you there? Oh, I hear something. I hear some type of wrestling around in Studio B. So anyhow, guys, I got a great show on tap tonight. We have Paul Willis joining us tonight, or Wallis, rather. My mistake. And he is an author of a very, very cool book called It Probes the World's Mythologies. And we're going to take a deep dive into what would be like the ancient aliens and it's things like that. It's a cool book called Escaping from Eden. And you guys got to bear with me because I got nailed with a big old cold. I don't know what the heck's going on there. And right now I'm sucking on a Hall's cough drop, trying to at least sound somewhat all right. Hopefully it'll pass quickly, but gosh, it's no fun. It's that time of year. It's always horrible like that.
How do you
know it's a cold?
How do you know it's a
what?
cold? How do you know?
Because I just know. I just know it is.
Okay.
Are you back from the restroom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I told everybody you had to go pee, and at your age, it takes like a half hour.
I've been back for half an hour.
Come on, you can do it. Come on.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure. It's probably not like when you're 16.
I know. I hear you. But anyhow, I was telling the audience who we're having on tonight as our guest, and that is Mr. Paul Wallis, and he will be talking about his book that's really burning up the charts, Escaping from Eden. And if you're a big fan of Erich Von Daniken, his work, Chariots of the Gods, or Ancient Aliens, or just high strangeness in general, you're going to want to hang around for the bottom of the hour for this one. Very interesting stuff coming your way.
Yeah. No, Paul is really cool, and I've had the pleasure of having some, video chats with him, and God, super, super smart guy.
Cool. How long have you known him?
A month.
Oh, is this another Facebook connection?
Yeah.
Man, you.
Well, no, it's not really. No, this one's not. Somebody just said, "Hey, you got to listen to this guy's stuff, right? He's got a YouTube channel."
Okay.
So I go on YouTube, and it was just really well done.
Okay.
And so
it's not a Facebook connection.
I just gave him a buzz.
Yeah.
It was like,
hey.
I was like 2 a.m, and of course, Australia, it's whatever time,
This morning, I got a tale for everybody. So it's 4 a.m. Imagine 4 a.m. You're laying in bed and nature calls, and you get up. You answer that call, you lay back down, you're like, okay, I'm going to go back to bed now. I'm so tired. Who the hell texts me at like 4 a.m. or emails me? It's Doug.
Me.
What the hell are you doing up at 4 a.m?
It was 5 a.m.
It was like super early.
5 a.m. Exactly. I approve.
My phone goes off. I look.
5 a.m.
I grab it. I'm going, okay. what the hell's going on now? And I look, and it's you.
What's normal wake-up time?
For me?
For everybody, 5 a.m.
6 a.m.?
Well, whatever. Hey, I was still on a 24-hour shift.
Have you slept at all?
I slept 2 hours in the last 24 hours.
Why?
Tons of work.
Oh man. Wow. I could not handle your schedule.
Well, it's just it is what it is.
You know.
I'm hoping tonight. You
might sleep.
I'm going to try to get to bed before 2.
Oh.
That's the
and wake up at what time? 5?
No, probably 7:30 or 8. It'll be a long rest. Yeah, anyhow. So, did you hear about, I was reading about these hippopotamuses that they declared humans. Did you hear about this?
Hippos, they declared humans. How would they be able to declare them humans?
I don't know. Okay, so apparently these are like descendants of Pablo Escobar's hippo herd that he had in Mexico or whatever.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So there's about 100 of them. They've bred into about a herd of 100 now. Well, they were going to euthanize them all.
Okay.
So some Colombian attorney, Luis Domingo Gomez Maldonado, filed a lawsuit.
Screams, "Stop!
Yeah,
don't kill the hippos. They're humans."
Arguing that they were humans, that they were legal persons. So anyhow, to make a long story short, I guess he won and they got saved. So apparently hippos are humans.
But only these hippos.
Yeah, only these. But anyhow,
only these.
But it reminded me, the reason I brought it up, because every time I read a hippo story, I think of a couple of things. One, everybody thinks they're really, they're kind of cute. They're real rounded.
No, they're not. They'll kill you.
Yeah, they're like the most dangerous animal, like in Africa for sure.
Everything avoids a hippo. Everything. Lions. Nowhere near it, man.
Lions. But it reminded me of a story I read where a guy got swallowed entirely whole by a hippo. And the part I remember the most about the article was when the guy described, all of a sudden, boom, everything goes dark. He feels pain and pressure, and he starts struggling. And the first thing he did was popped his hand out the nostril of the hippo.
No.
From inside it. Yeah. Which apparently is why it released him. And, vomited this guy up. But, I mean, he didn't get out unscathed. He had like 40 puncture wounds. His arm was cut off.
My God.
Yeah, he had some major problems. But he was swallowed whole and lived to tell about it. You talk about, when they say it's your day to die. Well, it wasn't his day. God, if you could survive that.
This dude is swallowed whole by a hippo.
Completely whole. Okay.
Completely whole, like Jonah and the whale style.
But the reason I read all these stories about hippos, every time I see one, I always kind of pay extra attention, because I had a run-in with a hippo, and I almost lost my arm.
You had a run-in where? At the zoo?
With a hippo. Okay, I've got to tell this story. So, back when I was 11 years old. Okay, you can imagine how cute I was.
Young Doug Highcheck, yes.
Young Doug Highcheck.
Rosy little cheeks, blonde hair.
Blonde hair, yeah.
Everyone just loved little Dougie Highcheck.
Yeah, exactly. Anyhow, so I heard there was a circus coming to town. And it was the Carson and Barnes Circus. And it was coming to the Red Owl Shopping Center, which back in the 60s was the only shopping center. It was a grocery store or whatever. But it was kind of a early mall, actually. It was kind of a prototype of a mall. But anyway,
what town are we talking? We talking Minnesota, or are we talking?
Yeah, Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Coon Rapids. Okay. So it was a store called Red Owl.
Yep, I remember Red Owl.
Circus. It was in like the little shopper paper. So I get a hold of my buddy, and I'm like, dude, we should get up really early and go up there and see if we can get jobs, all right? So So we rode our bikes up at like 4 a.m, pitch black. We get up there and it's still pitch black, and we see a guy walking around. We see one tent with a whole bunch of semi-trucks. And this guy's walking around, he's like hawking loogies up, and he's coughing really bad. And I remember we cracked up really bad. He put his hands like down his pants, he started itching really bad.
Oh my God.
Just laughing our asses off. And we're watching all this, because he doesn't know we're there, right? And we're just kind of using our little, night vision. Anyhow, so
sure.
then the guy does a farmer blow. First time I've ever seen.
Oh, God.
So we're watching all this grossness, right? So we wait a little bit, and we kind of sneak up on the guy, and we approach him and say, "Hey, we're looking for a job." And the guy, the guy ended up being a really nice guy. He ended up hiring us. And so we actually had a job at the circus, which of course at 11 heard all my first really bad swear words.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, just exposed to a lot of, let's say a little rough around the edges people, but very nice. I have no bad memories. Everything was great. But we did everything. Can you imagine us actually holding stakes for the tent?
No.
While they were sledgehammering them in, we did till they got them.
Really?
Yep.
So would that earn you guys free tickets to the circus, or what would that do?
$10 a day and free tickets. Yep. And not only free tickets for us, but free tickets for friends and parents or whatever.
Wow.
So, okay. So we did all that, and then when everything got set up, then I got lucky enough to be in charge of the, it was a tent full of animals like camels and llamas. And of course, there was 3 elephants, and there was a hippo, one lonely hippo. And the hippo was by the entrance where people would come in, right? That had the money or a ticket to get in. And some kid threw a straw down the hippo's throat.
Oh no.
And I'm looking at this hippo, and it would kind of sit around with its mouth open to cool off.
Yeah.
Because it was a hot summer day. But all of a sudden I hear this. And I go to find out what the heck is going on. And I look and I see the straw down this hippo's throat, way down its throat. And of course, what do I do? An 11-year-old kid, I reach way down into its throat. And I grabbed the straw and I pulled it out.
What was it, a nice hippo? Was it a tame hippo?
I still got my arm, dude.
That's true. I guess it's as nice as it could be.
But think about how easy that could have gone wrong.
You could have been one-armed Doug.
Yeah, I think about that. So anyhow, I always kind of take extra notice of hippos and hippo stories constantly.
Hippos kill all sorts of people.
Yeah, they do. 3,000.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's like one of the most on Earth.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. Well, the thing is, they can go on water, right? They can get you if you're swimming, or they can get you on land because they can run super quick and they're very territorial.
That's true.
Yep, super territorial. And of course, they have these massive, teeth, tusks, and giant teeth that'll just, oh my goodness. I mean, they'll grab a crocodile and just kill them instantly. Or a lion.
Well, I don't think that there's, hippos. Lions, stay away from hippos.
But, the one really cool thing at that circus, I got to meet my first celebrity. Do you remember a show? Yeah, you're maybe not. I don't think you're old enough. But have you ever seen reruns of a show called Sky King?
No.
So it was a 50s, late 50s, 60s show. And it was just a guy it was kind of like Sea Hunt. You remember Sea Hunt?
No, I don't remember Sea Hunt.
White Bridges? Okay. But anyhow, so this guy would be in his little Cessna or whatever, and he would always encounter criminals and fight crime. Okay. And that's kind of the premise of the show. And it was,
he would fly around.
Yeah, and I watched
from airport to airport.
Well, yeah.
Stay just long enough to solve a crime.
Somebody would always try to kill him in every episode. Yeah. So it was like Sea Hunt. I'm sure there's old episodes of Sea Hunt and Sky King on YouTube. I haven't even checked.
Okay. I never even heard of it before.
But the guy, the main character in Sky King was there, and he was part of the circus because he would do these he would do this thing where he would drive a Ford truck and have a tug of war with an elephant. So I got to meet Sky King, and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, man.
Yeah. For a celebrity.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is cool. Huh. I had to Google Sky King.
Yeah.
And it began in 1946 as a radio show.
Oh, yeah.
Actor Roy Windsor. Mm-hmm. Is that who you met?
I don't remember his name anymore. It was
yeah. Really? Television version starred. Oh, Kirby Grant as Sky King.
Yeah, that sounds more like it.
So you met Kirby Grant.
I remember even the sign on the truck, like they would go to a town and they would hit like the local Chevy dealership or Ford, and it would give them a brand new truck just to use for this tug of war against an elephant.
Oh, very cool. He is, of course, no longer with us, Kirby.
No, I can only imagine.
But he died in 1985.
Yep.
October 30th, 1985. And, yeah, he was the actor remembered for playing. It was a Western-themed adventure series.
Yep.
Sky King.
Yep. Took place out west, yeah.
So they played like cowboys.
I actually loved the show. I watched that and Sea Hunt with, Jeff Bridges is.
Yep,
That's
I do.
Jeff Bridges' father.
Lloyd
Bridges. And it was weird because when I went to Mexico, I went with the camera guy from Sea Hunt. He was the camera guy from Sea Hunt. It was really cool.
Were you excited?
Well, it was cool to meet him and hear all the inside stories about, because in every episode of Sea Hunt, the guy would get his air hose cut. Like every episode. They had this formula, and it was just, you never thought about it then when you watched it week to week. But every episode, man, the guy got his air hose cut.
Every episode, the air hose was getting cut.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Man.
TV was different.
I mean, that was a good show back then, I suppose.
Yeah, it was. I'd see somebody just text me. Somebody said, hold on here. I got to see this because there's some connection now. Was the niece Penny with Sky King? He's asking me this. I have no idea.
I have no idea either.
I don't know. Somebody's listening live.
Huh. So yeah, Lloyd Bridges was in it. Whoa, is he young? Wow.
Yeah.
He was really young back then. I mean, of course, now he's no longer with us.
First time I went to the Sea of Cortez on a squid expedition, which was an expedition for the Rojo Diablo, the Humboldt squid.
Sure.
All we were trying to do there was film attacks. That's all we were trying to do. And the actual camera guy, or one of them, I was the camera guy too. But he was one of the guys that actually organized this expedition, was the Sea Hunt cameraman.
Oh, that is really cool. He must have been elderly at this point.
He was elderly, yeah. He was, but he was super interesting.
Yeah, I would imagine. Mike Nelson, Lloyd Bridges, is a freelance scuba diver. You don't see many of those around anymore. And a former Navy frogman who left the service about 4 years before the series began, and an auxiliary member of the United States Coast Guard. He is a well-known expert on diving and often called on for difficult, dangerous projects.
But look, if you're a young person, never heard of these shows, they're worth checking out.
Heck yeah, remember A-Team? Come on, today that's considered old too. A-Team.
I've turned my young daughter onto some of these old black and white series.
Yeah.
And she's really enjoying them because they're very different. They come back from a day when life was simple,
That's true.
And I think they see that. True. People see that when they watch. Like you remember Gilligan's Island, obviously.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, but Steve, you think back watching that when you were a kid, and you probably watch reruns, but life was so much simpler back then.
Well, they tried to get it back on the air in 1987, and it never took. I think in 1987 they had 22 episodes, so that was probably 2 seasons anyway.
Yeah.
During the revival, but it just never quite took off the way that they were hoping.
Yeah.
And so there was 23 episodes if you count the pilot.
right? And you remember when we had David Paulides on, Missing 411, author and researcher. Well,
Yep.
I was reading a story. It said a new twist on Missing 411. And apparently there was a hiker in Colorado who was totally lost on Mount Elbert, got lost on October 18th. And of course, he had a cell phone with. So, the first thing rescuers are going to do is try to call the guy.
Right?
Well, the guy wouldn't answer his damn phone because he didn't recognize the number. I swear to God.
Oh.
I swear to God, he's lost, but he won't answer the number because he didn't recognize it.
He didn't recognize the number, so he's not going to answer. Go, just I don't care who you are right now. Just listen to me.
Thought they were warranty calls or something. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Enough said on that one.
Yeah, right.
And then
warranty calls.
Yeah. I read another. I do a lot of reading now. The weather's kind of gotten. It was really nasty today. Oh my God! Have you ever seen?
It was nasty.
Wasn't it nasty up there?
No. We're supposed to be having a snowstorm tonight, dumping about a foot of snow on us.
Well, we had clouds that were so thick it looked like almost, like it was nighttime all day.
Yeah, I mean it was dark. Yeah, it was a dark day. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, but we're supposed to be getting freezing rain first and a bunch of snow.
Okay, all right. Enough about that crap. But anyhow, so I'm reading this article and I was thinking about how bad this might have been, for how creepy it was for people. So residents of Ipswich, England, for years were hearing a nursery rhyme at night. Can you imagine going on years?
That's creepy.
In the middle of the night, they're hearing, it would happen at all times. 4 a.m, 3 a.m, 2 a.m. They hear this.
Highcheck live there?
No, they heard this song of little children singing, "It's raining, it's pouring," right?
Yeah.
During the middle of the night, but it would happen at all different times.
And no one could find it?
Nobody could figure out what is this? Anyhow, eventually they figured it out that somebody had that recording as their alarm at a business. It was a motion alarm at an industrial park.
And somebody had that as their alarm.
Their alarm to freak out the burglars or whatever would try to break in.
Oh, jeez.
It would freak them out. But they didn't. So the residents would hear this echoing, in the night.
Yeah. But for years.
For years.
For years they'd hear it.
This went on 4 years.
Does it say how they figured it out?
No, I don't even care. Do you?
Well, sure, I care. We
got to do the... it's kind of like you just read the headline for 3 lines. And that way you can read more. If you just skim like I do, you can read way more.
Well, skimming is not truly reading.
Well, it's the way I operate. I can't. Then I speed read maybe the rest. I don't know what I do. It's bad. It's bad, Joel. You have no idea. It's bad. I don't have much time to read, so I just speed read.
So have you ever just sat down and read the entire article recently?
No, never.
Oh.
I don't think.
Sue.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. Oh, Huh.
And
hey,
what?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well,
I was going to talk to you about this rust thing, the thing that happened with Alec Baldwin.
Oh, yeah.
By the way.
That's kind of...
you've been on sets before. I mean, maybe you can clue people in how closely monitored like a shooting set is. I mean, it's crazy.
There's a lot of chaos on a movie set. I haven't been on that many of them, but I have been on a few. In fact, I was at one. One of them, the first ones I ever was on, was actually at my dad's house. And it was a feature film, a regular feature film with actors. Yeah. In fact, some of the actors are quite famous, including Karen Black was there. Remember her from way back?
Yep.
Back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, this happened during the 90s. And it was a movie that I rented my dad's house out for. And they gave him quite a bit of money for it because it was vacant, right? It was a pretty nice new home. It was a unique home. And they picked it out for that reason. And the art director ended up spray painting a bunch of stuff on the wall because that was one of the scenes.
Yeah.
And then they left the curtains open. My dad calls me up. He was freaked out.
Did your dad know that you were renting the house?
Sure.
Out for a movie? Okay.
Oh, yeah. He was getting the money for it. He knew. But it was the point that he didn't know. He knew they were going to replace all the carpet and repaint the walls and give them X amount of thousands of dollars, right? That's all he knew. He wasn't living there. He didn't care. Yeah. But what he didn't bargain for is that they had left the curtains open and they spray painted these messages. And one of the messages was, a woman died of boredom in this bedroom.
Oh, boy.
And they left the curtains open.
Then they left it wide open.
And then, of course, the neighbors are maybe, and he's thinking the neighbors are going to think this is real, right?
Yeah.
It's for a movie.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine, he probably wasn't.
I would imagine then, yeah, what went through his head, worried about the neighbors, what they're going to think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he wasn't too happy when he called me. I calmed him down.
Yeah.
We got the curtains closed, and then, of course, he just didn't know. He just thought, oh, my God, what are the neighbors going to think?
Right, because the more I read about this Rust fiasco, which is horrible because a young lady lost her life, so we can't downplay that at all. That's the most important part.
Yep.
Is this young lady lost her life, and that's tragic. But you're watching everybody slowly turning on each other. Yeah. I mean, it's just insanity.
Do I think any criminal charges will be filed? I don't think so. Or if they are, it'll be they'll get prosecuted and they'll just be on probation.
I don't see Baldwin ever seeing a courtroom because I just don't think he would be culpable because he believed, if you listen to what they're saying, he believed the gun was cold.
It reminds me of a case where, let's say, a deer hunter shoots his rifle off before the sun comes up, and he ends up hitting somebody. Here's rustling in the bushes. And he shoots into the bushes thinking it's a deer, but it's really a human. He kills somebody.
Yeah.
It's kind of bad. It's not. Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And, there again, if you're deer hunting this fall and you hear, I don't care what you hear, you need to see exactly what you're shooting at.
Right. Recognize your target.
Don't be shooting at sound. You need to see.
Yeah.
Like the whole deer before you can shoot it. But
I agree.
Okay, it's kind of like one of those cases, does a person who does something that stupid deserve to go to jail? Because it's stupid. What Alex Bolton did was stupid. You just don't aim a gun at somebody and fire it, not checking it.
No, not even if it's a toy gun or a cold gun or
a Nerf gun. You don't even with a Nerf gun.
No, you don't. You don't. And the reason why I bring it up is because now crew members filing the first known lawsuits over the shooting of Rust, like I was saying, they're starting to all kind of turn on each other, and which is unfortunate because I think it would be better if they would kind of come together and explain what happened for closure for this poor girl's family.
Yeah, well, there's going to be any because they're going to miss their daughter.
Yeah,
forever.
Yeah,
and so there's not going to be that kind of closure. But
right. It's just such a strange story as it's unfolding.
Yeah, I think maybe somehow money can be gotten out of these people. Then the fund goes to training.
Yeah.
Of more of these, gun handlers on these movie sets. Yeah. And I've done shots like this too, where you're shooting at the camera with a real gun. I've had to do reenactments where there's been guns involved, and we've had many Monster Quest reenactments where we've used guns and real guns, or prop guns, and we've had the same kind of safety things.
Yeah.
And one of the first time I did the first time I did a reenactment with guns was one of my first shoots I ever did for Ron Shera for North Country, Minnesota Bound, where he was attacked by a deer. A guy came up from Texas, got a hotel room at the Elk River Motel, and went out, and first thing he saw was this big deer, right? Sees this big buck, and he's like, oh, my God, it's a monster compared to what we have in Texas. So he goes to go get a better look at it. Well, the deer attacks him. And people don't realize that deer and rut are very dangerous.
Yeah, they can be very aggressive, very dangerous. Their hooves are like knives.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people get killed in America from deer. Deer in the rut. But, okay, so the guy gets attacked. He gets rammed up a tree. He climbs up the tree, and the deer is just like ramming into the tree. And so one of the things I did was I put antlers. It's one of the first POV shots. I put real antlers in front of the lens and taped them on the side of the camera. So it was like looking through the deer's eyes through.
Yeah, deer perspective, deer cam.
Deer point of view. And I remember Shara going, damn, that's brilliant. The shots didn't look good. And then, of course, ramming the camera into this guy I flew up from Texas. Really real. But then the cops showed up and shot the deer.
Become a Walmart Plus member and be the first in line to shop the hottest online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else. So yeah, Walmart Plus helps you get the gift. The first one your kid wrote on their list like 5 months ago. The gift that if you could just get your hands on it will make this holiday the best holiday ever. Yeah, that gift. Become a Walmart Plus member at walmartplus.com and be the first to shop online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else with early access. Not available to trial members while supplies last. With unlimited free delivery, a Walmart Plus membership helps with whatever life throws your way. And the holidays throw a lot. Like when you make a gift list, check it twice, but still forget someone. Or when you plan a dinner for 4, but 14 show up. Or when you turn away for 2 seconds and your dog eats the turkey. Bad boy, Dino! Walmart Plus saves the holidays with unlimited free delivery on fresh groceries and more at everyday low prices. Start your free trial membership at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Restrictions apply. See membership details.
And I had to work with getting that shot of, the point of view of getting shot.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. That's cool. So people, if they find that episode, they can watch that because I think they're available, that Ron Shera show, somewhere. I think they're on YouTube or something.
Oh, this one's not. This goes way back to like one of the first episodes. In fact, I think it was the first episode.
Man, that's cool. We should try to see if you have that in your vault.
I have them here. I have them.
Yeah, we should release that sometime.
Yeah, I can post them. Ron would love to see me post them.
Yeah, that'd be really, really cool.
He doesn't even have copies, I don't think, because he borrowed one.
Really?
Here recently for Don Shelby's award party. He had a journalism award. And they used my tape where I had Don hunting night crawlers in the middle of the night on a golf course with a dog that hunt night crawlers, and it was a contest between this dog and Don Shelby with all this high-tech equipment and the dog just using his nose.
That's funny. Yeah. That is great. We got to get out of here, Doug. We got to get our guest on. Paul Wallis, everyone. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this with our guest.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Highcheck. Doug, you are there, am I correct?
Yep. I didn't have to pee.
And you're gone again. You know, that'd be awfully strange. Again.
No, I didn't.
Again.
No, I'm good.
I know. I'll let it go now. How does that sound? I'll just let it go. It's okay. It's okay.
I just
Great
can't
guest
believe you
tonight.
told the audience. I can't believe you told the audience.
I'm very open with our audience.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just wait. Revenge is going to be sweet there, Mr.
Oh, that's okay. that is okay. That is more than okay. I'm very open with our audience, and I just explained Doug isn't here because he's using the restroom.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's like somebody. I remember one time a pretty big name celebrity called my home, and I don't know who. I think it was Blaine. Oh, somebody called. Blaine answered the phone. He's a little kid, and he's like, "Well, he can't come to the phone. He's in the bathroom.
He's in the can right now. He can't come."
And so
anyhow,
I called the guy back, and he goes, "You should have a talk with your son."
You should have a talk to your son and tell him it's not cool to tell people that you're in the bathroom.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, let's bring on Paul.
Yeah, we have a great guest on. We have Paul Wallis on with us tonight, and he works and probes the world's mythologies. Their insights. He has insights into humanity's origins, human potential, and our place in the cosmos. He is an international best-selling author and popular speaker, researcher. His work has been endorsed by Erich Von Daniken himself. Paul is also a very popular YouTuber. So check that out after the show. And that link to Paul's YouTube will be in the description on untoldradioam.com, right there in the article page for this show. So if you are listening, or if you want to find that YouTube page, again, it will be at untoldradioam.com. You can check that out, and you can watch Paul's stuff. Paul, welcome to the show.
Joel and Doug, good day. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I'd say. And so we just found out it was noon there, and of course it's 7:37 here, but he's like Thursday. It's Thursday there, correct, Paul?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Australia is in the future, and that is where I'm speaking to you from. So, and I think you said I'm the first Australian on your show, so that's a real honor. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And what's the future like? Is it just like today, or?
Well, hopefully it is improving.
Yeah, right.
I'll just leave it there.
Right. So what kind of got you into the interests to write this book, Escaping from Eden? I mean, what was the thing that got you going on this? Like, peering into the human origins and where we come from and stuff like that.
Well, my route sometimes surprises people because my book, Escaping from Eden, is about paleo-contact. So the theory that our ancestors had contact with ET civilizations from elsewhere in the cosmos, way in the deep past. My route into paleo-contact has been surprisingly through the world of Christian ministry. I was 33 years in church ministry as a church doctor, theological educator, Archdeacon for the Anglican Church in Australia. And it was really particularly through my work in training pastors that got me into this, because I was training them in something that's called hermeneutics. That's the principles of interpreting ancient texts. How do you get from the texts what the writers intended you to, instead of reading stuff in or making mistakes? How do we work out what's going on? And then once you've worked out what the writer meant you to get out of it, what do you do with that? So that's what hermeneutics is. And so we would do what's called form analysis, where you ask the question, what kind of literature is this we're reading? You have to do that with every single text. And then form criticism leads into something else, which is, where did it come from? What's this based on? Is there an earlier text that this was adapted from? And if so, how does it differ? And then, particularly because my first love is languages, you have to go to the fundamental question every time of, what do the words mean? And it was actually all those kinds of questions, as I applied them to the Bible, that a whole load of anomalies started cropping up in the stories that we're used to hearing from the Bible. And I'd make a mental note of, that one doesn't quite make sense. I have to go back to that, or that. What's going on there? Because God seems to be doing some brutal things there. I can't quite preach a positive message from that. What is really happening there? Finally, after 33 years in the ministry, I had the time to drill down into some of these hermeneutical questions, and that was the little white rabbit that led me into the world of paleo-contact.
Okay. So when you say that, and you have people like Erich Von Daniken, which I've interviewed Erich in the past, author of Chariots of the Gods, you believe ancient aliens then? You believe that there is otherworldly influences on early man?
Well, what I found through my studies is that our ancestors believed it. And not only those of our ancestors who wrote the Bible, but those who have bequeathed to the world the mythologies and ancestral narratives of every culture on every continent. They all have an account of our ancestors having contact with advanced beings who came to planet Earth from somewhere else in the cosmos. And many of them go further than that and say that our development as a species cannot be explained until we tell you about that moment when our ancestors were modified by those who colonized the planet in the deep past.
Can you put a year, Paul? Sorry, Joel. Can you put a year when you talk about paleo-contact? First off, I have never heard that term. So it's a very
okay. It's a very useful term.
Yeah,
because
it's cool.
if you say it, most people will say, "What's that?" and then you can explain it.
Well, what year would paleo-contact possibly start? What would be the year, or how long?
What I found in the book of Genesis, drilling into the translation questions and rereading it with more a root meaning interpretation of the words involved, the key words involved, what emerges is that you've got a number of stories of beginnings that are placed side by side in the early chapters of the Bible, particularly in the book of Genesis. And by the time you get to Genesis chapter 11, you've read 3 or 4 planetary resets, 3 or 4 stories of beginnings. And what's interesting about 2 of them is that the beginnings begin on a planet that's been devastated by some kind of a cataclysm. That is actually how the stories of beginnings begin in many, many cultures around the world. And it was those kinds of correlations that got my attention and that made me think maybe we need to read these stories a little differently. Maybe they're not moral tales, because actually you try and read Genesis 1 to 11 as moral tales, it's a pretty bizarre morality you come up with there. Some people like to read these texts in a fundamental way, as if it's science, it's history, it's a diary entry, word by word, that's exactly what happened. But I found the more I found these correlations across the cultures, the question that raised for me is, what happened? What is the memory that all these stories are curating? Because some of the correlations indicate it's a visual memory, that ancestors in Africa, in Nigeria, saw the same things that the ancient Hebrews talk about, or that the Filipinos talk about. They're describing the same picture using different language, different metaphor, but essentially they're describing a planet that's been devastated, flooded, and then others arrive in their craft, hovering in the sky, who then begin the rehabilitation that has to happen in order for life and civilization to reset on the planet. And I realized as I began joining the dots and seeing this picture emerge that I wasn't the first person to suggest this, that 2,500 years ago, Plato had come to the same conclusion by listening to other ancestral narratives at that time. So that's what convinced me that there are stories of beginnings that relate to ET interventions. And you asked date. Well, I think the interventions are many, going back thousands and millions of years. But most of our familiar stories of beginnings, including Genesis chapter 1, I think are describing what happened as we re-emerged from the aftermath of the Younger Dryas cold period, and tying that all in with the Clovis comet event. I think that's the flooding that we're remembering, and that's the assistance in re-establishing ourselves on the planet that all these stories talk about.
So the Great Flood happened. Of course, we know that from the Bible. The Bible talks about the Great Flood, and we all know about the Noah and the Ark. I mean, that story. But you're saying that once the water started to recede, is that when the aliens or the otherworldly beings came to us, or did they come to us?
Become a Walmart Plus member and be the first in line to shop the hottest online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else. So yeah, Walmart Plus helps you get the gift. The first one your kid wrote on their list like 5 months ago. The gift that if you could just get your hands on it will make this holiday the best holiday ever. Yeah, that gift. Become a Walmart Plus member at walmartplus.com and be the first to shop online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else with early access. Not available to trial members while supplies last. With unlimited free delivery, a Walmart Plus membership helps with whatever life throws your way. And the holidays throw a lot. Like when you make a gift list, check it twice, but still forget someone. Or when you plan a dinner for 4, but 14 show up. Or when you turn away for 2 seconds and your dog eats the turkey. Bad boy, Dino! Walmart Plus saves the holidays with unlimited free delivery on fresh groceries and more at everyday low prices. Start your free trial membership at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Restrictions apply. See membership details.
Right during the throes of this horrible Great Flood, and they saved the day kind of thing. I mean, I guess, what did they do when they got here, I guess, is the question. I mean, did they help us? And how did they change us, if they did?
Well, for me, one of the most intriguing and most detailed narratives that answers that question is the one that comes out of Mesoamerica. And there's a lovely version of it that comes out from Guatemala in the Popol Vuh. So this is the story of beginnings that has its roots in the Mayan tradition. We didn't know what it said outside of Guatemala until the early 1700s, when Francisco Jimenez, a Dominican friar, had built up enough trust with the locals that they came to and said, would you like to read our story of origins? And this was an amazing moment because it is a real tribute to that man's integrity, because it's only 200 years before that the invading forces had burned every copy they could find of that book and executed every priest they could find who would tell that story. 200 years later, they offer him this text in Quiche and he translates it. And what the Popol Vuh says is they arrived at a time when our ancestors' continual existence on the planet absolutely hung in the balance. So I don't think there was any natural recovery happening. There was a remnant of life on Earth surviving on whatever land was still available. And the situation was so dire that when the others arrive, and the Popol Vuh describes them as those who engineer, it's an interesting little phrase, when they arrive, they ask, how do we re-nurture life on this planet? That's how bad it was. And then beyond that, how do we nurture intelligent life? And then how do we develop sentient life? And the story rolls that they found our ancestors. It doesn't say exactly who our ancestors were or how developed they were or whether we're looking at human or hominin or hominid.
Sure.
But the way the story unfolds, it suggests they found a hominid. They found possibly a primate. And then they began working with that species to turn them into a more developed, more intelligent species who could be a useful workforce for them. And the text says very brazenly, let us make avatars for ourselves to do the work and bring us our food. And apparently what followed was a long period of experimentation to bring us up to what they wanted. And maybe they were doing this in the same way we breed cats or breed dogs for particular attributes, but that wasn't sufficient. It didn't work. And I mean, the level of mistake and dissatisfaction in their results, you could liken it to engineering something like a gorilla, finding it's very capable, very strong, but actually has no interest in working for you. It was that level of mistake. And finally, they come up with Homo sapiens sapiens plus. So that's us, but with a little bit more ability to anticipate, a bit more precognition, better telepathic connection, better self-healing abilities, better remote viewing. And then they had to have an emergency meeting, the story says, because they found they couldn't manage humans that were that intelligent. And so they had to brain damage us a bit, shut off bits of our brain to bring us down to a point where we were limited to our 5 physical senses. And then for anything beyond that, we just have to trust what somebody told us. And they found they could work with that. They could manage that. And that, so the story goes, is us. And what happens in the Popol Vuh is just a far more detailed version of what emerges in the book of Genesis. When you do the translation work, do that and you'll realize it's actually a retelling of the Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian, Assyrian stories. And then you find echoes in narratives all around the world, Filipino, African, Indian, Greek, Norse, and the Celtic stories. And the more it repeats, the more it grabs your attention. And you have to go back to that question. What happened? What is the memory that all these cultures have curated?
Well, it also begs the question, okay, they created us, we're here today. Why'd they abandon? Why aren't they here now?
Well, it's assuming they're not, but let's assume they're not. I wonder if it's rather similar to patterns of invasion and conquests that we might be familiar with through studying history on planet Earth. If you think about how, well, all the empires have done this, but let's take as a, for instance, Britain going into Ghana. So Britain takes over Ghana because there are resources there that the British want. They want the gold. They want to build the economy Britain enjoys today on gold, and they want the cocoa, and they want the other things that are produced in Ghana. So they go in with force. They go in showing they are the advanced people because they've got this advanced military tech and they're going to dominate the country and take control. So the British become the army, everyone else is an insurgent. The British become the police, anyone who contradicts them is a criminal. The British become the school teachers, the public servants, the politicians, the governor general, etc., etc. And they run the country that way for a while. But once they've set the commodity prices, the exchange rates, set up the banks, they can begin to relax a bit. Now the locals can be the police, can be the teachers, can be the public servants. And there comes a time when the British, around about 1950, can finally go home, but still enjoy all the benefits of sitting at the top of the economic tree. So it can work that way, or it can work in an even more brutish way. You might go to somewhere, get all the minerals you want, go home, never return again. It's very possible that in the deep past, planet Earth was colonized in that kind of way.
Interesting. Yeah.
I've got kind of a broad question for you, Paul. Is there any evidence? This is something I've personally just almost felt, I guess, without, really reading any evidence. But is there any evidence that you've ever uncovered that all life on Earth originated from another world? All of it. Humans, early humans, just every. Is that?
If you talk to the top scientists in the field of DNA research or research into genetic coding, that's where I think you'll hear the most credible voices saying exactly what you've just said. So if you go to the co-discoverer of the double helix of DNA, Francis Crick, that's exactly what he believed and argued for from the get-go. From before he got the Nobel Prize, that's what he was saying. He said, what we're proposing doesn't make sense on the timelines on this planet. The genetic coding for life on Earth must have come from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. If you listen to Maxim Makukov or Vladimir Sherbak of the Fezenkov Astrophysical Institute, the Karagel-Farabi National University from Kazakhstan, they are top authorities today in the field of the genetic code, and they would say exactly the same. They would say that there is evidence in the mathematical patterns of DNA itself to indicate that the coding came from off-planet, and that in all likelihood, if not the whole cosmos, at least our corner of it, is full of this genetic coding, that whenever it lands in a hospitable environment, which means a planet with water, it will generate forms of life similar to the ones with which we're familiar on planet Earth. And so talking to those authorities, that's the picture, that life in the universe is the norm rather than the exception. And they see the hard evidence for that in the mathematical structures of DNA itself.
Wow.
So it's like planet seeding is what it is. It's just seeds.
It
in
is.
Your planet, and with the right soil, it flourishes.
Yes, it is. And it's not just a theory that's floated by people in the field in an idle moment. The European Space Agency has spent more than $80 billion testing that theory. And whenever they send probes up onto comets, that's what they are testing for. They are looking for the building blocks of life. And if they find comets that have bits of DNA on them or the building blocks, they say, well, here we are. Life is not just here. The coding was found on this as well. So when you're testing with that kind of a budget, it's not an idle theory, clearly. It's something with wheels.
That was quite an answer. Holy man.
That's an interesting theory.
You just made my whole day.
And this is something Carl Sagan believed as well. So if you're looking for authoritative, credible voices speaking this, a lot of people love Carl Sagan because he was a very rigorous scientist. He would never present something that he couldn't back up scientifically, was not interested really in speculating far beyond that. But he wrote about this theory I've just called is panspermia, the idea that the seeding for conscious, biological, intelligent life is spread throughout this part of the cosmos. He argued for it. He co-wrote a book about it. He wrote papers about it. He published papers about it. And then he wrote a novel about it, which was, of course, Contact. And though he wouldn't stand up and present this as fact, it takes a lot to write a novel, and it was his only novel. And that was the idea that he wanted to share with the world through that novel. So he's one of many significant, credible people who take this very seriously as an explanation of where all life, and you're quite right to say that, Doug, not just human beings, all life on Earth came from. And it caught my eye, caught my attention about 2009, I think it was, when the Roman Catholic Church under Pope Benedict XVI, the most conservative pope in my lifetime, convened a symposium to discuss the theological implications of contact with other civilizations. All of Pope Benedict's spokespeople who came out and met the press after that colloquium in 2009 used the language of us being part of a wider cosmic family. And so it really was against that background idea of panspermia, the idea that we are all related, that we have all emerged from the same genetic coding, was part of the language coming out of the Roman Catholic Church and from very authoritative sources. So it's an area that I'm quite comfortable talking about for those reasons.
Well, I often wonder, though, if because life is so diverse, most people can't even comprehend how diverse life is here on Earth. And it's so perfect and so balanced. And so it's just, it's mind-blowing. And I always wonder, is there a chance that it wasn't, life didn't come here on DNA packets on a comet, but it was actually brought here and placed? 2 giraffes, 2 jellyfish, 2 this, 2 that. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, there is a story from out of Zulu tradition that says exactly that. And it's a story of, just as you say, developed forms of life arriving on the planet in what's described as seed pods. And it's a beautiful, very graphic, it would make a beautiful movie. And as I read this Zulu story of Unkulunkulu, the first man arriving and populating the planet with all these forms of life, what happens is that you've got from outer space these pods arriving, and they look like bulrush pods, but inside them there are different forms of life developing. And then one of them bursts open. Unkulunkulu, this first human, gets out, and his job is to open up all the other seed pods, and he lets the fish into the rivers and the zebras onto the plains, etc. And it's a beautiful, very graphic story representing the idea not only that the coding for life came from off planet, but actually entire species came. And it's a story that is rather counterintuitive for people who've only known the land to say that the life didn't come from the land, the life came from space. But that's how that story goes. And when I first read it, I thought, hang on, haven't I seen this in a movie? And of course I have, because it is a story that gets retold in many ways, from story to story, movie to movie, because there's something very, very resonant about it. And I wonder if there's a cultural memory around this.
That's, okay. So, the reason I ask those questions is because I've always just kind of instinct, it's been an instinct since I was a little kid that this was all brought here. Things were released, things were planned, like planting a garden, and done on purpose, with a purpose. And it just kind of always just assumed that. And so when Ancient Alien concept came along, I was just like, yeah. Kind of just reinforced what I've always just instinctually on a gut level felt as a human being. Everything seems so amazing, Paul. And to me, I don't see any conflict with God or anything. I just don't see any conflict. So how do you feel about that? I mean, do you feel conflicted? Or are you so open-minded that you just go, yeah, it all just still fits?
When you operate a business, maximizing efficiency is your business. At CenterPoint Energy, we know your margins can be thin, so we provide any sized business money-saving rebate programs and services. Upgrade to high-efficiency natural gas equipment to save big now with rebates and lower operating costs for years to come. Visit centerpointenergy.com/save now. Hurry, rebate applications are due December 31st, helping you save money, energy, and the environment. CenterPoint Energy. Always there.
With unlimited free delivery, a Walmart Plus membership helps with whatever life throws your way. And the holidays throw a lot. Like when you make a gift list, check it twice, but still forget someone. Or when you plan a dinner for 4, but 14 show up. Or when you turn away for 2 seconds and your dog eats the turkey. Bad boy, Dino! Walmart Plus saves the holidays with unlimited free delivery on fresh groceries and more at everyday low prices. Start your free trial membership at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Restrictions apply. See membership details.
Well, I have had to do a lot of reconsidering and reframing of my understanding of things as all this picture opened up for me, because really it was for me like taking the red pill in the Matrix when I did this translation work, and this whole other story began opening up, and I realized it was there, hidden in plain sight in the Bible. And it did reframe my thinking about God, because I realized that through translation mistakes and through deliberate suppression, there are many stories that we've told as God stories that are in reality stories of paleo contact. So a lot of stories that I thought were God stories in Genesis and all the way through the Hebrew scriptures turn out to be stories about totally other kinds of entities. Curiously, there were a number of very significant church fathers at the beginning of Christianity who said exactly that, and who argued that we should not glue the Hebrew scriptures onto the apostolic writings to make a Bible of 2 parts, because those stories were about another kind of entity. That was all part of the mainstream conversation in the beginning. So it changed in that respect. But as I thought it through, I realized that my understanding of God was simply getting bigger. And it's funny that I mentioned the colloquium in 2009. Many of those theologians were saying, look, this shouldn't shock you. It just means that God, the creator, has created a bit more than you might have thought. And at one level, yes, that's kind of what it amounts to. But I was really curious to see how Plato held all this together, because many of those church fathers I mentioned were absolute admirers and devotees of Plato. He had a concept of God that he had concluded that he believed in, but he also taught paleo contact. He also taught populated universe. He also taught that our species was modified by extraterrestrial visitors who upgraded our ancestors to be more conscious and more intelligent. And he had a wonderful way of holding all that together. So seeing that in Plato, seeing how the church fathers picked that up, really helped me to think it through and say, I'm very comfortable thinking in terms of God, to use that word. And I have to acknowledge it's a very unhelpful word for some people, because it's difficult to say that word without hundreds, thousands of years of religious entrainment being invoked by the word itself.
Yeah,
but
sure.
if I define it, then I'm happy to use the word. And I find a wonderful moment in the New Testament where the Apostle Paul defines what he means by God. And he says, because he's talking to an audience that's not Jewish, not Christian, so he has to define his terms. He says, by God I mean the source of the cosmos and everything in it, that in which we all live and move and have our being. And so he saw, just as Plato did, the material universe as the emanation of a single source, the expression of a single source. And it gave him a vision in which we are all profoundly interconnected with one another and with source, so that your intelligence is a participation in source intelligence. Your consciousness is a participation in source consciousness. And I find that quite a helpful way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean,
Go
ahead.
Understand what you're saying. I was going to say, though, doesn't it kind of fly in the face of God created us? I mean, if aliens came and created us, like you said earlier, doesn't it kind of fly in the face of all that?
Well, no, and I wouldn't say aliens created us. if we go back to panspermia, the universe is filling up with life, and then some of our cousins come and modify us. That's how the ancestors express it, not that an alien turned up and created a human being from scratch.
Sure, okay, I must have misunderstood that totally.
Okay. Our ancestors were here, and then we got modified by cousins, as it were, visitors who are more advanced than us, who wanted to come and use us for their own purposes, as a workforce, as it says in the Popol Vuh. And the hints of that are there in other narratives as well from around the world.
Sure. Do you think it's like aliens had a hand in creating us, and some alien had a hand in creating the aliens? You know what I mean? There had to be came first the chicken or the egg. But it's all a metaphor. The Noah's Ark, is that just a metaphor, the story of Noah's Ark, for some ship that landed here with, thousands of these, millions of these pods of life?
It's a really intriguing question, because the correlations of stories of flooding and survival around the planet are really, really intriguing. And the story of Noah, it turns out, is based on the stories of Utnapishtim, Ziusudra, Atrahasis from out of the Mesopotamian stories. What catches my attention in those patterns is that the arc that we have described across those cultures, so you're looking at similar stories across a geographical area and across centuries. Mm-hmm. The key elements are the same, that there's a flood and that this family has to survive. This family and their farm, if I can put it that way, have to survive, and they are given instructions by another kind of being as to how to construct an escape pod. The instructions correlate from culture to culture, century to century, in the telling of the story to such an extent that the volume of the arc varies across those stories by no more than 4%. So that suggests there's something quite concrete that has been recalled here, but it may be that in the telling of the story, there's another layer as well. And this is something I would love it to be really simple, but I had to come to terms with the fact that often these stories are told and retold, so that when you go, for instance, to the Andes, you will hear this story of origins, but layered in are stories of the progress of our solar system. And you've got to realize that these sentences may refer to this totally other phenomenon. And it's the same with the Ark story, that you might have a very concrete memory of an actual survival, of an actual flood, but then there may be other elements in the story that are telling an entirely different story that has much more to do with genetic engineering and a library of DNA and a library of genetic coding. All those things could be going on in the Noah story. But what doesn't make sense in the Genesis 6 telling, the way we translate it right now, is that the human beings had to escape a genocide inflicted by a loving God. You've only got to read that story to a small child for the child to point out there's a problem here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why would a loving God who had created humanity from scratch genocide it, which is the most evil thing we can think of in our human minds? Genocide is the worst thing you can do. Yeah. Go to the root translation and you discover, no, actually, there's a constant conflict going on among different colonizing factions as to how Project Earth should go, how Project Humanity should go. And humanity frequently gets caught in those crossfires. And that's what those early stories are really recalling.
I used to, in a very simplified way, Paul, I used to think of the Ark as it came from outer space. That's, in my mind, kind of the thing that I just accept, that the Ark was not from Earth and wasn't there to protect or, move and save animals. It was there to bring them here from some other planet that was being destroyed.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And that goes right back to the Zulu story, because that's really what they're saying. So there's if you want our ancestors to come to your aid with your thesis there are plenty of ancestors who can do that for you, Doug.
Yeah, it's just, it's just one of those things that you, I've just always looked at the entire Bible as examples and metaphoric stories that not only represent good and evil and give you stories on how to do good things, do bad things, to explain the forces of evil and the forces of good. And that's what I've always gotten out of it. And no more. And just, kind of boil it down to that purity. How do you, what's your take on good and evil and the balance of it? And is it possible for planet Earth to be at some point more good than evil? Or is it already far more good than evil? Or are those forces balanced? Because
or is it neutral?
Obviously, one can't exist without the other. We wouldn't even know what it was if we didn't know what evil was. Or would we? I mean, my question is, what goes through your mind, Paul?
Good and evil are really loaded words. Mm-hmm. And after having spent 33 years in ministry, I can see how that language often gets hijacked. The good is what we say it is, and the evil is what we say it is.
Yes.
And if another culture, another we has different ideas, we're tough because we're the ones who know what good is and what evil is. And just to underline that, we know that it's good to genocide priesthoods in South America in order to establish the truth and plant Catholic churches across the continent to teach the truth. Well, actually, I say that we're now sufficiently removed from that to look back on what the Spanish and Portuguese did there and say, perhaps not good. And I'm not singling the Spanish and the Portuguese out because every empire does the same and justifies violence because they're doing something good. They're civilizing that land. And I mention that because I think that confusion, you can draw a straight line to that confusion from the translation choices that have been made in the Bible, for instance. So where you've got a story that's really about paleo-contact and you've got ETs who have colonized part of planet Earth and are treating humans brutally, you translate that as a God story, you're suddenly going to start justifying brutal behavior by an implacable, inscrutable, unaccountable deity. Another, for instance, a story a lot of people will struggle with from out of the Bible is when Abraham is told to sacrifice his son Isaac as a burnt offering. And he says, oh, okay, because God has asked him. Oh, okay, I'll do that because he's a good, obedient man of faith. And then at the last minute, God says, only joking. Now, it's translated as a God story. If that's a God story, then again, you've got a brutal, vicious, horrible entity you wouldn't want to get anywhere near. If that entity expects that level of obedience that you would kill your own children, there's something wrong with that. Now, there's a bit of a dissonance here because a lot of preachers will preach from that text, trying to make Abraham the hero. But if any member of their congregation came to them and said, I nearly killed my children this morning, only changed my mind at the last minute because I realized God didn't really want me to go through with it. If you heard that story from a member of your church, you wouldn't say, what a good father you are. You're a real man of faith, aren't you? You would contact the police and child services straight away. But the reason we don't apply that common sense to Abraham is because it's told as a God story and you can't question God. Do the translation work, and it turns out actually it was the Elohim, the powerful ones, who so terrified Abraham that they could get him to kill his firstborn son, something that repeats in ancient cultures all around the world, cultures that do child sacrifice. If you can get a human being to kill their child, you've got total control over that human being. And in wartime, unfortunately, humans play games with other humans that are that horrible. It's the Elohim who did that in that story. And then it's the messenger from Yahweh who says, no, Abraham, don't do it. So the original telling of the story has the messenger of Yahweh rescuing Abraham and Isaac after other entities have terrorized Abraham. That makes better sense to me than a God who wants you to do that and then says only joking. But because it's been told as a God story, you can't question God. God can do anything. God can do things that seem evil, but we'll call them good. It sows this moral dissonance into Judaism and Christianity from the get-go. And I would say it's why we are now having commissions, royal commissions, government commissions, looking into the most appalling institutional abuse by church authorities that was allowed to persist because a culture had built up that you do not question people who speak for God. So when I talk about hermeneutics and translation choices, they have far-reaching consequences because with those mistakes, errors, suppressions, we justify invasions, colonization, enslavement, and all kinds of abuse through history.
So, Paul, okay, after everything you've known and thought about, if you had to write a one-sentence definition of good, what you think is good, and a one-sentence definition of evil, could you come up with that sentence? And what would it be? I'm really curious because you're so knowledgeable and you've got such a perspective. What would be, how would you explain that to somebody, those two meanings?
Well, if we're looking at these old stories and realizing that you've got a story of conflicts among species and humanity suffering at the hands of other species, then I would say good is pro-human. I put it that way because now when I read the Elohim stories of the Hebrew scriptures, that's what I'm looking for. Who are the ones who are pro-human and who are the ones who are harming us? And I'm happy to say the ones who are pro-human are good, the ones who are harming us are not good.
Okay.
If I want to answer at a more cosmic level, what is good, then I would just choose another word, which is love.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're here to learn. That's what makes a diverse population work and a populated cosmos work. If we can learn love, then we're talking about harmony. We're talking about everything positive that can flow from that. And it needs a lot of unpacking, but I think that's quite a good start point.
Have you applied the concept of opposites in your work? Where left can't exist without right, and warm can't exist. If you had never felt warm water, you wouldn't. Cold water couldn't exist.
Yes.
My father told me a story. He said, at one point there was nothing, and then nothing divided into two to learn about itself. Into two.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautifully put.
And that's how I grew up, with that simple philosophy, and that we're here to learn. And then he said to me, when finally every combination of everything has been done, and it knows about itself, it'll go back to nothing and start over again.
Your dad sounds wonderful, and I love the language you used to tell that story. Yes, that's broadly what I would believe, and it's a lovely expression of what Plato taught as well. We are all here as part of the cosmos, experiencing itself and learning. And I think the ultimate question we're learning is, can we do intelligence as a material universe of seemingly separate things? Can we do harmony as a cosmos of plurality of species and civilizations? I mean, can we do it on this planet? It's quite a good start point. Can we do harmony here? Can we do love here? And we begin to realize that there are many therefores that flow from it that have to do with justice and economic behavior. And it's a great learning that we're all on. I think we learn it at an individual level as well. That at some point, you live long enough to begin asking, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And I think learning your particular part in the achieving of love and harmony, it will be somewhat different for each one of us. But I actually think that really is the underlying theme. But I like how your dad put it, because you're right. You need an other in order to have experience and knowledge. And Plato does think in terms of opposites, as you were saying. He does think in terms of binaries, but then he does get beyond that it's not all black or white or yin or yang, but there are other states and possibilities beyond that are then suggested by that start point.
There was one more thing I'm going to say about my dad, Paul. He often said to me, when you're born with endless desires. And depending on what you do with those desires will determine whether you are a good person or an evil person. But that you can't ignore your desires. That they need to be lived out. If you have a desire to play the guitar, you can do bad things. And it's true, you can. You could play really nasty, hate music, and you can do terrible things with a guitar. Or you can do wonderful things. And it always made so much sense to me. And so I grew up questioning everything I did as to whether this fit with what I wanted it. Is this going to help people? Going to make people love more, be happier? And I often, refer back to that as kind of my moral basis, I guess, for everything I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Where did your dad get all his wisdom from, Dad?
I don't know. He did a lot of meditating. He wasn't of any denomination. In fact, all of my brothers and sisters are all different denominations, from Jewish to Mormon, I go, Christian, whatever. And so he just taught us all basic common sense things. And he was a brilliant man. And unfortunately, obviously, he's I would love to be able to have a conversation, with him again as I've gotten older. But there's just, the things that you dwell on and that you teach people about are so huge that I often wonder, what you fall asleep thinking about at night, Paul. Because you have so much historic knowledge.
What do I fall asleep thinking about? Yes, somebody was asking me the other day. He wanted to do some coaching with me, in fact, which I do with people, because he has recently stumbled across all the topics that we've been talking about. And he says, how do you live with either all these questions or the knowledge that the world is thus and so, and stay grounded and be happy?
Yeah.
And I'm glad I give that impression, but I think we all wrestle with that to some extent. My great advantage is I have a beautiful family. I have 3 kids. I have 2 cats. And so the practicalities of these fundamental questions of harmony, peace, order, those are the things every family wrestles with from day to day. So when I get into bed, I am asking myself the question, how do I wind down? How do I chill out? How do I get myself to sleep? And how I do it is I love story. And I find if I can get into a story, do something as mundane as watch Netflix, it dials me down into a place where I'm calm and I'm enjoying something. And it relates to what you were just saying about what your dad was saying, really, Doug, because I think it is a beautiful and a wonderful thing to reach the point where you can say, I like this, or I want this, or I would love this. Because I actually think life tends to bully that out of us. The necessities of surviving, making a living, pleasing your employer, so on and so forth, often bullies all that out of us, so that some people really struggle to remember what they like and what they want and what they would love. But I think it's getting into that enables us to navigate all the questions, whether it's questions like the ones we've been discussing, questions of how you navigate a very unusual and difficult 2021. If you can get back to yourself and know what you're wanting, I think that's something that grounds us psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the very basic things of, I enjoy the bread and butter things of being able to go for a walk, of getting sunlight on my skin, of being able to eat nice food, of being able to have company from time to time. I think these things are really important and grounding, because if you don't have that in place, then almost any work or field of research can really fragment you and stress you out. I think keeping your feet on the ground is really important.
Yeah. I agree. You need that decompression, that something that grounds you and makes you you and gives you some pleasure in life.
Definitely. I mean, I love my work. I'm very fortunate that the work I do and that supports my family is all tied in with my enthusiasm and my passion. And I'm very fortunate to have that. Not everybody has that. But even with that, you need your other stuff as well. So when I finish talking with you guys, we're going to the beach. We're driving to the coast.
That's awesome.
And I won't be doing anything other than walking on the beach, weather permitting. And I do think that balance is important, because I think it's when you can bring a healthy energy and a sense of pleasure and fun to your explorations, that's when you can see things from a fresh angle and think new thoughts and process new information. So I think it's a really important thing to have the balance.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, because you need all those different dimensions to yourself to round out yourself, and and there's nothing more important than that downtime, reflection time as well.
Definitely.
So I've got some. It's amazing. I'm looking at the time going, oh my God, we only have a half hour left. What are your thoughts on two things? One, this obviously very deliberate cover-up through many cultures of our alien past, extraterrestrial past. So I want to touch on that. And what do you think is really going on today? And are we being visited by many cultures? What influence are they having on us today? And who's visiting us and why? What's going on?
Why the cover-up? First.
Yeah, let's talk about the cover-up.
Yes, I think the cover-up is really long-standing. When people talk about disclosure and cover-up, they're often very focused on the actions of the Pentagon and the US government, and when are they going to come clean about what they know. But I think the cover-up is really far more ancient than that there has for a long time essentially been a policy of non-disclosure from those who have been visiting us. If you look at the history of the Bible, there was a moment in the 6th century BCE when the final edit was done on the Hebrew scriptures. And it's clear that at that point, there was a desire to airbrush over all the memories of ET contact that were plain as day in the old stories. And so they imported the holy name of God into those earlier texts. So that was a we don't want people to know these stories moment. Similar things happened in early Christianity. We don't want people knowing that those texts are about other entities, and so other choices were made. Or fast forward to 381, the Common Era, when Theodosius, the emperor, militarizes orthodoxy so that all the Gnostic stories that talk about contact and other phenomena get pushed aside and made to be seen as so dodgy that they were buried in the desert to protect them from being totally destroyed so that future generations could read them. You get to 1600 and you've got people like Giordano Bruno talking about populated universe, and so the church kills him by immolation to tell Christians around Europe not to talk about these things. I mentioned earlier the invasion of Central and South America by Portugal and Spain, deliberately burning all the stories of paleocontact and replacing them with the Holy Bible. So it's a very long-standing pattern of suppression. I think that we've got stories from the deep past when our ancestors saw those who had colonized the planet and were working for them. Those stories are in the Bible. And then you get to a period when they're just not there. And so where have they gone? Well, they haven't completely gone, because you've got stories of prophets in the Hebrew scriptures remote viewing the Sky Council that's still calling the shots. Fast forward to 2020, just before Christmas, Haim Eshed, the brigadier general who was chief of space security for Israel for 27 years, said that on the basis of everything he knew from those 27 years in that work, his understanding is that there is, and he didn't say Sky Council, he said an intergalactic federation, same thing, which we are in contact with at a covert government level, but that has chosen not to self-disclose until we all have a better understanding on planet Earth of what space is. So what he was saying, very credible figure, and it's just incredible it didn't get more attention in the press. What he was saying was what our ancestors said thousands of years ago, that there is a plurality of ET demographics who are very interested in Project Earth, who have a hands-on in how things are rolling on planet Earth. Again, echoing what you can hear in other places, I fascinated by the work of a guy called Robert Kirk, who was a Presbyterian minister who published a book around about 1600 saying there's a non-human.
With unlimited free delivery, a Walmart Plus membership helps with whatever life throws your way. And the holidays throw a lot. Like when you make a gift list, check it twice, but still forget someone. Or when you plan a dinner for 4, but 14 show up. Or when you turn away for 2 seconds and your dog eats the turkey. Bad boy, Dino! Walmart Plus saves the holidays with unlimited free delivery on fresh groceries and more at everyday low prices. Start your free trial membership at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Restrictions apply. See membership details. With unlimited free delivery, a Walmart Plus membership helps with whatever life throws your way. And the holidays throw a lot. Like when you make a gift list, check it twice, but still forget someone. Or when you plan a dinner for 4, but 14 show up. Or when you turn away for 2 seconds and your dog eats the turkey. Bad boy, Dino! Walmart Plus saves the holidays with unlimited free delivery on fresh groceries and more at everyday low prices. Start your free trial membership at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Restrictions apply. See membership details.
Influence on politics around the world. It's an extraterrestrial hand in human affairs. It was called The Secret Commonwealth, the book that he put out. So I think that's what's going on. I think we don't visibly serve entities who are non-human, but I think, just like the British retiring from Ghana, still being at the top of the economic tree, I think we may be looking at a picture like that, where we've got a number of demographics who don't want it to be known that they are involved with governance of the planet, and that there are dark, covert layers of government that have conversations with them. That's what Ed Mitchell said was happening. Ed Mitchell, the Apollo astronaut, sixth man to walk on the moon, said that's exactly what's happening, and he wanted transparency about it, because I think he had a concern about who's representing us, in whose interests are decisions being made. Wouldn't it be better for all of us to be in the picture? And sure. I share that view as well. So that's what I think is going on.
So, you talk about this federation, this basically federation of planets or races of extraterrestrials. Why does it seem that the Greys are the most prominent? Are they the ones in charge? Are they the most prevalent race? I mean, or can we talk about that a little bit? What are they looking like? What races are we dealing with?
Well, yes. I wonder, though, if they're the ones who tend to get seen and talked about.
Yeah, they get all the headlines, yeah.
But what if some of them look very human? Suddenly the Greys might not be the most prevalent ones. It might be the ones that we don't spot that are the most prevalent ones. And there's a curious moment in the New Testament where one of the New Testament writers, John, fully expected the early Christians to be in contact with other entities who he calls spirits. So what are they? He never defines what they are. He just says, you will be getting information, just weigh it up, just test it. Keep your sovereignty, he says. Which is kind of curious, because a lot of Christians today would say, don't go anywhere near channeling. You could get all sorts of wrong information. Well, John believed you could get wrong information as well, but his answer was not, don't do it. It was, keep your sovereignty. Think about what you're hearing, but you are going to be in contact with other entities. Now, he called them spirits, but he didn't say what they were. Could they be energy-based beings that communicate with us that way, because they are in evidence on the Sky Council in the Hebrew Scriptures? Could they be material beings, just like us, who communicate telepathically? Well, that's entirely possible, and back in the 40s and 50s, it was that kind of communication the US government was interested in developing to get to the bottom of the UFO phenomenon. So you can't dismiss that too quickly. Or could it be interdimensional entities that you're experiencing and channeling? And when you go to ancestral cultures that have ceremony to create altered states of consciousness, part of the goal of those altered states is to get into communication with entities that operate on some kind of a different frequency. So that hints at other dimensional entities. So I think all those are in the picture. So John doesn't mention small greys. He mentions that kind of entity. So again, it's possible that's the most prevalent, or the human-looking ones, or the small greys. But no, I don't think the small greys are in charge. My impression from contemporary law is that they are much more like the foot soldiers. Okay. They're not the top authorities. And indeed, some people, I don't know if you've come across this, Doug, but some people who've had encounters have found they've been able to shoo them off. That if they take authority in a situation, they've got a bit more clout with the small greys than at first they thought. And so again, that suggests to me they're not the ones in charge. They're actually more like the foot soldiers. And that's the small grey. I know there's a huge spectrum. There are other greys who might have a bit more to them than that.
Yeah. There's a lot of different races people have allegedly, been abducted by, and we're going to get an abduction here in a minute. But there's everything from Nordics. There's greys. There's even reptilians. There's all sorts. I mean, there's really a wide array of different looking extraterrestrials that people have had contact with.
Is there any ancient descriptions of the greys, Paul, or the reptilians?
I haven't come across any verbal descriptions of greys, but there are plenty of depictions of them in ancient art, including rock art. So I would suggest the greys have been here for a long time, for sure. Physical descriptions, well, you've got ant people who are described, you've got shining ones who are described, you've got beings that appear to be amphibious being described. So we do have some physical descriptions in texts, but I haven't come across a physical description of a small grey, other than perhaps when you get into the Fae stories from out of Northern Europe and the Celtic traditions. If I say the word fairy, most people will think of Tinkerbell in Peter Pan. But when you read the work of Robert Kirk in the late 1500s, it was the Fae tradition that he was learning about from the locals. And as he listened to those stories, he realized these were not cute stories at all. They were stories about entities that may be small, but somehow have enough about them that they can abduct human beings as part of a hybridization program. And you hear that and you think, oh, that is not what I thought the fairy stories were.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that either.
But they sound a little bit like phenomena we might hear about today, narratives around small greys, narratives around orbs. Those are all part of the Fae tradition.
Okay. Well, why the abduction? I mean, are they just keeping tabs on what they have modified, or what do you think's going on with just a huge amount of abductions? I mean, just what are they doing? The experiments, I guess. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you say alien abductions, and I think for a lot of people, that's the point where they say, okay, you've lost me now, because it is the hardest phenomenon for people to take seriously for some reason in the present day. And when I wrote The Scars of Eden, the sequel to Escaping from Eden, I had no ambition to write a book that was going to go to alien abduction, because as much as anybody else, I want to be taken seriously, and I know people struggle with it. But the moment you start listening with an open ear to ancestral narratives from around the world, you cannot avoid the subject, because it is the element of the story that recurs the most frequently. Anyone who reads the Bible will know about abduction of human females from Genesis 6 by this other bunch of entities described as Bene Elohim. It's never quite explained who they are. The writer seems to think we know the story. Now, in that story, it says they came because they found Earth girls very attractive, and they wanted some of that in their gene pool. If you go to the African stories, go to Ghana, listen to the Mami Wata stories, the Maharani tradition out of Kenya. You can hear this all around Africa, into the Caribbean, as far east as the Philippines. It's everywhere. The suggestion is that this other presence is actually trying to improve its own gene pool by hybridizing with us. So the Mami Wata stories are of another presence on planet Earth who live in underwater bases, and they will periodically abduct people to there to use them for hybridization, and then 2 or 3 years, 4 years later, usually the person will be returned, but the children will not return, because the whole purpose is for them to modify their own species, either because they need to strengthen their gene pool, they may be a fading species, they may be too few in number, or because they're wanting to adapt better to planet Earth because they like it here.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of different reasons why abduction's happening, not just one cut and dry. This is what's going on. There's different reasons for different species.
I think so. I mean, that's if you're listening to ancestral narratives and expecting to find something meaningful from out of them. That is the meaning that emerges. And I think once you've done that, you can go back to contemporary report and say, well, if I'm willing for people to say this 100 years ago, 500 years ago, am I willing to hear from someone who said it happened 10 years ago? And personally, I am.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that theory. That theory, because every other type of theory I've heard is for, some nefarious, experimentation or to do this or to probe or to do that. You had a completely different idea on that.
Well, you see, this is where the good-evil thing breaks down a little bit, because nobody wants to be abducted, and taking anyone by force or against their will for hybridization and then return them, what really are the ethics of that? But I think you can begin to say, well, all right, okay, it's not nice, I don't endorse it, but I think I can see why they're doing it, and it's not because they've turned up to be incarnations of evil. And it's interesting that with many of these stories of hybridization, people are not taken by force. They're actually enticed. So whether you're listening to the Welsh version of this story, Tylwyth Teg, or Tylwyth Teg, I should say, or you're listening to the Ghana version or the Filipino version, it's always said that people are enticed, that they are promised that they are going to benefit from this period with them. They're going to come back healthier and more intelligent, and they'll be able to live a more prosperous life as a consequence. I don't know if that's always the case, but that's how they're taken, that they're not physically kidnapped. They are, would you like to come with me? And I have a few people who've come forward to me for coaching over the last couple of years who have had those experiences, either of being taken or of being enticed and they decided not to go.
Interesting.
That is interesting because we've had other people talk about abductions of the positive nature where they've been cured of cancers. They've been their lives have been just opened up to them in so many different ways, in positive ways. Yeah, definitely. So it's not all, oh my God, I was abducted and they did these horrible experiments on me, or they did this or they did that. You're right. There's also a lot of good stories. People wanting to go where they look forward to their next trip with them.
And I think people should bear in mind that that's just as hard for someone to reveal as their experience as anything else. And that in fact, in Kenya, for instance, if you reappear after 3 years and go home and say, I was taken by, these other people, and actually they're quite nice, that's not a story that's going to endear you to your family, help you get a better job. You're quite likely to be medicated or have the local priest come round to do an exorcism on you. None of these stories advantage the people who tell them. And I think it's one of the reasons we should listen with an open ear and a bit more respect. And yes, part of the story is there are presences here who are not violent, not horrible, quite nice, but they are doing something that we don't know about for the most part.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Say, I want to talk about Ancient Aliens, the TV show. Has that had an effect on you? I mean, I would imagine that it certainly has made your life easier if this is things that you're, interested in. But are there things that they're holding back on? Are there things they're not even discussing?
Holding back on Ancient Aliens?
Yeah. Are they? Because it is on a network television show. Is there information you when you watch Ancient Aliens, you find yourself going, how come you never talk about this and this and this?
Well, to be fair, I haven't really watched Ancient Aliens. It might shock you for me to say that. I'm certainly aware of Ancient Aliens and the work they do. I think what I can say, because I would know this through my conversations with Erich Von Daniken, is that what is not revealed is those very credible scientific figures who've come forward with corroborating evidence who said, please don't quote me. And that happens all the time. So Giorgio would have had a lot of people go to him that way, just as has happened to Erich Von Daniken and to myself, where credible scientists come forward and say, I have got evidence that shows what you're saying is correct. Use it, but never mention my name. And I asked Erich Von Daniken, doesn't that exasperate him, that there are people saying they'll support him privately but not in public? And he said, no, it doesn't, because if he didn't respect that, then he would have missed out on so much information through the years that has supported his thesis.
Become a Walmart Plus member and be the first in line to shop the hottest online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else. So yeah, Walmart Plus helps you get the gift. The first one your kid wrote on their list like 5 months ago. The gift that if you could just get your hands on it will make this holiday the best holiday ever. Yeah, that gift. Become a Walmart Plus member at walmartplus.com and be the first to shop online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else with early access. Not available to trial members while supplies last.
That it is far more useful to him to allow them that cover, because it means he's got the confidence he's on the right track and he has actual data that he can then write about. So I'm sure that would be the case for Ancient Aliens as well, that they're saying what they can, they're revealing what they can, but what they can't do is say Professor such and such came forward and showed us this.
Very interesting. That was an answer I did not expect, Paul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was great. So probably, a huge fan of yours wrote me a note. And he's got a question, and when I say he's a huge fan, he's a huge fan. He also said he's got 5,000 questions for you. He asked, how do Neanderthals fit into the biblical Garden of Eden story? So how does it?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a really good question, because really just in the last couple of decades, the story of human origins in terms of paleontology has become really complex. And the simple story that you and I would have been taught in school of this single line of evolution where gradually Homo sapiens sapiens gets perfected and outcompetes all the others and they all die off and here we are, we can't tell that story anymore, because we now realize that there have been far more different kinds of human being on the planet, far more kinds of hominin on the planet than ever we've imagined. We used to talk about the problem of the missing link. Well, now it's missing links, plural, because they all emerged from out of nowhere. And then where did they go? Did we interbreed and then some distinctives were recessive? Well, with Neanderthals, that may very well be the case, because we now know that some of us have a fair bit of Neanderthal blood in us, and Denisovan and unknown others. So that picture's become very complicated. How does it fit with the biblical story? Well, that's a question a lot of people ask when they finish chapter, let's get this right, finish chapter 3 of Genesis, go into chapter 4, and you've got the story of Cain and Abel. Now, by the story of Cain and Abel, we've only heard about 4 people: Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel. And then Cain kills Abel. He is exiled from the safety of the enclosed zone of Eden. And at that point he says, you can't exile me out of here. The people out here will kill me. And so the Bible reader says, people out there? Who were they? Well, if you want to read the story as a sequence of stories, and if you want to go to the root meanings, then the picture begins to fill out a little bit, so that Eden, we realize, is an enclosed zone where there is a genetic engineering breeding program going on, where human beings have been developed as a cloned species and then upgraded to a fertile, intelligent, conscious species. That's the story there. And so I would say outside of the enclosed zone, you've got a whole load of other hominins who are not being worked with by that particular group of colonizers. And so it may be that there is a certain privileged line there that we're being told about of the upgrades that we enjoyed. But now we look back paleontologically and we can see, for instance, that the history of fire long predates anything we know about Homo sapiens sapiens. And so the mystery only deepens. But again, go back to the Popol Vuh, which says very openly there was a very long process of experimentation to get the right kind of human being. And I think paleontology is beginning to bear that out. And some of the differences are so intriguing. It's different kinds of human being for all kinds of reasons, different kinds of skull in particular. So I can't give a definitive answer other than to say I think this is a wonderful period to be asking those questions, because the old paradigm has been blown open. We cannot tell the old story of gradual evolution anymore, and we have to start telling a story about different kinds of human being and ask from scratch, where did those different kinds come from? And then what happened next?
Sure.
Every time you answer a question, Paul, it's always amazing.
Yeah, and then that makes you think. You're like, well, wow, that blew me out of the water. Yeah, I mean, that whole thing, because it's a very... It puts a lot of what we have been taught our whole lives, kind of puts it on its ear. You see what I'm saying, Paul?
So absolutely.
This is it's really kind of a lot to absorb in one show.
I know.
Hearing
I'm
all
quite
this,
aware of that.
It makes me speechless in a lot of ways.
That's how I felt when I'd finished writing Escaping from Eden. Just far more questions than when I started out. And that's why I had to write a sequel, The Scars of Eden. And that's why I'm working on a sequel right now, because one question leads to another. And you sort of circle back to earlier questions as your picture fills out. I actually find it quite energizing having questions to pursue, but I recognize it's very unsettling for a lot of people, especially at first, if they've lived with a particular paradigm for a long, long time, and all of a sudden there's data here that is challenging the integrity of that worldview. It can be really worrying, and people do a lot of what I would call bargaining. It's like the stages of grief, denial, and then bargaining, seeing if you can wrestle your current beliefs around so that the new information can fit in. And that's really why I do my coaching, because people do need a handhold through that process. And it does take a while to begin thinking through, so what does that mean about this? What does that mean about this?
Exactly. I mean, it just changes, like you'd said, the paradigm that we were so used to. But I'm open to it. I'm open to all theories. But you've explained it far better than most.
I must say, I love the fact that I'm contacted by people of all ages. And just in the last week, I've had a number of guys in their 70s who are doing this rethinking, reframing, going back to questions that they never had satisfactorily answered. I find it exciting that people can live with a paradigm for a very long time and then say, no, I've got to review that.
Wow. And where do you think those paradigms are for most people on the planet? I mean, it's a tough question to answer, but do you think that people's paradigms are changing really quick? Or do you
Yes, I do. I do. I've never known a period like the one we're in now for people questioning their old worldviews and challenging things that have just been base assumptions for them all through their lives. And so, I mean, we can talk about assumptions like living in an unpopulated universe. A lot of people have felt very secure with that, and they've bolstered that with their theology if they're believers, or, particular views about social order. People can live quite comfortably with a particular, this is my philosophy of life, these are my politics, and then something will happen that blows it out the water. And I think for a lot of people in the last 2 years, things have happened that have really caused them to question their philosophy of life, question their politics, because they are seeing things that don't make sense. I was talking the other day to Richard Dolan, who I really like. I admire the work he does as a ufologist and a researcher, and I asked him what got him into the topic. And I was really surprised by his answer. And he said it was when he was a student and he read a mainstream book about the JFK assassination that gave the conventional explanation, and he realized it was rubbish. And that was a light bulb moment for him, the idea that the official story of something might not be the whole story. And for a lot of people, there are moments like that. Whether it's the true story of terror attacks or incursions into other people's countries, something will suddenly happen that makes them think, hold on, what I was told, what I believed was not right. And it can take no more than that, just one white rabbit to follow, and suddenly you're in a rabbit warren of 101 different questions and challenging everything that you've taken for granted for decades.
It's almost like everybody has their own level of. It's like you're awakened one day, and so I mean, to me, I feel like it happened to me when I was very young. But other people, it's still fantastic when they can wake up from all the brainwashing. I mean, don't you really feel that this is kind of what it is some form of brainwashing to not think, just accept all the paradigms that we're told and just look straight ahead, go to work, shut up.
Yeah. I think brainwashing is right. And I think, the clue is if you challenge something and your challenge is met with ridicule, that's when you're onto something. Because I think ridicule is the strongest weapon that the status quo has to stop people asking questions. So if ridicule is the thing that's brought out, you might want to follow that white rabbit a little further.
Sure, it's the pushback. You're right. It's the once you've struck that nerve, and there's the pushback. That's when you know you're on to something at that point.
Exactly.
So another big fan of yours, David Ellis, just sent a question in. He said, "What are your thoughts on Bigfoot and Mothman and some of these things that people keep seeing over and over and over throughout history? What are your thoughts? Where does Bigfoot fit into all this?"
Well, to go back to the Popol Vuh, the Mesoamerican story of origins, it's a very helpful story because it's so detailed. And there's a moment in that where it says that this experimentation that led to us also resulted in some others, who it describes as ape-like creatures who live in the forests. And when I read that, a chill ran down my spine. I thought, that's Bigfoot. Ape-like creatures that live in the forests that were developed from primates. So the picture fills out in the Popol Vuh that there may be ape-like creatures that live in the forests who share a common ancestor with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued that the Popol Vuh didn't say we were descended from apes. It said that we and apes shared a common ancestor. So that's quite a detailed picture there. So you've got primates, humans, apes, ape-like creatures that live in the forest. So immediately that gave me a framework for there being other presences that are not apes and that may be somewhat similar to us, that could be more advanced than us in some respects, but that certainly didn't want to serve superiors, thank you very much, in the way that human beings are so clearly programmed for. So that was my start point of going back to Bigfoot and thinking, well, there might be something serious here, and our ancestors have told us a few things about them. I put up a little video on my channel, the Paul Wallis channel, and then did a longer one on the Fifth Kind TV about the Australian Yowie. And I was a little bit agnostic about the Australian Yowie when I did those pieces. But then when I went to the comments and read all the personal experience that was coming in the comments from people around Australia, and the detail of their experiences absolutely convinced me that we've got them here. And it's an intriguing presence here because Australia has no primates, has no great apes, but it has us and it has the Yowie. And so then there's a very big question, well, where did they come from? If there are there's no ancestry here.
Man, very interesting.
Now I take it seriously.
Paul, this is just, wow, has this hour and a half just really flown by? Unfortunately, we're towards the end of the show here. So why don't you tell people, the audience is listening, where they can get your books, how they can get a hold of you, that kind of stuff.
Sure. If you go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Hive, Book Depository, wherever books are sold, you'll find Escaping from Eden and The Scars of Eden. If you want to get into conversation with me about what you find there, you can find me on the Paul Wallis channel on YouTube. I'm in the comments there every day having conversations with people. Watch the Fifth Kind TV on YouTube. And you can come to my website if you're interested in doing coaching. Come to paulanthonywallis.com. That's Anthony with an H, Wallis, Wallis, paulanthonywallis.com. And I'd love to get into conversation with you.
Man, very, very cool. Very, very eye-opening, right, Doug?
Oh, yeah, and we just skimmed the surface, so I'm going to beg you to come back at some point.
Oh,
I'd love to. I'd love to. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it's been just
great,
amazing.
Great stuff.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I will look forward to our next conversation.
Well, you represented Australia just perfect, Paul.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you have a great day at the beach.
Oh, will do. Looking forward to it.
You have a great time at the beach. Until next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other. Make sure you read these books. You got to check this stuff out because it's deeper than you ever imagined. Until next time, guys, this is Joel, and this is Doug right over there. Signing off.
Become a Walmart Plus member and be the first in line to shop the hottest online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else. So yeah, Walmart Plus helps you get the gift, The first one your kid wrote on their list like 5 months ago? The gift that if you could just get your hands on it will make this holiday the best holiday ever. Yeah, that gift. Become a Walmart Plus member at walmartplus.com and be the first to shop online Black Friday deals 4 hours before everyone else with early access. Not available to trial members while supplies last. With unlimited free delivery, a Walmart Plus membership helps with whatever life throws your way. And the holidays throw a lot. Like when you make a gift list, check it twice, but still forget someone. Or when you plan a dinner for 4, but 14 show up. Or when you turn away for 2 seconds and your dog eats the turkey. Bad boy, Dino! Walmart Plus saves the holidays with unlimited free delivery on fresh groceries and more at everyday low prices. Start your free trial membership at walmartplus.com. $35 order minimum. Restrictions apply. See membership details.